When I first met Ryan, I thought he was just friendly. He was the kind of coworker who remembered everyone's name, held the door open, and always seemed to have something nice to say. So when he started being especially warm with me, I told myself not to read too much into it. But after a few weeks, I started wondering, is this really just friendliness? Was he treating me like everyone else, or was there something more behind it? That question sounds simple, but in real life, English makes it even harder, because native speakers often use warm, casual language that can sound more personal than it really is. Today, I want to tell you what happened and show you the English that made everything so confusing. Ryan joined our team on a Monday morning. He was new, but he did not act nervous at all. By lunchtime, he had already talked to almost everyone. When he came over to my desk, he smiled and said, "You must be Emily." I was surprised that he knew my name. Then he added, "I have heard good things about you." That sounded flattering, but also very normal for a new coworker. I laughed and said, "Hopefully only good things." He laughed too and said, "So far, so good." It was an easy conversation, and I did not think much about it. The next day, I was making coffee in the kitchen when Ryan walked in. He looked at my mug and said, "That is a serious cup of coffee." I told him mornings were not really my thing. He smiled and said, "Good to know I am not the only one." Then he asked what kind of coffee I usually drank. Again, completely normal small talk. But the next morning, he came in holding 2 coffees. He put one on my desk and said, "I took a guess." I looked at the label and realized he had remembered exactly what I told him. I said, "You actually remembered?" He shrugged and said, "I have a decent memory when something matters." That sentence stayed in my head longer than it should have. I kept telling myself he was probably just thoughtful. Then came the first phrase that really confused me. One afternoon, we finished a meeting at the same time. As we walked back to our desks, Ryan said, "You make these meetings way less painful." I laughed because I did not know how else to respond. He continued, "Seriously, you have a good energy." Now I had a problem. "You have a good energy" can sound personal, but it is still not automatically romantic. People use it to say someone feels positive, calming, fun, or easy to be around. So I filed it under maybe and moved on. A few days later, Ryan stopped by my desk around noon. He said, "I was going to grab lunch." Then he added, "Want to come?" That sounds simple, but context matters. Was he asking because he wanted one-on-one time with me, or because we happened to be standing next to each other? I asked, "Is anyone else going?" He said, "Not that I know of, but we can invite people if you want." That answer made things even less clear. If he had insisted on going alone, that would have felt more personal, but he did not. He left the choice open and made it comfortable. That is one important clue in real-life social English. A low-pressure invitation can be friendly, interested, or both. One sentence alone usually does not tell you enough. We ended up getting lunch together. At first, we talked about work. Then the conversation slowly became more personal. He asked how long I had lived in the city. He asked what I usually did on weekends. He asked whether I had family nearby. None of those questions was inappropriate. But together, they felt more intentional than ordinary office small talk. Then he asked, "So what do you do when you are not saving the team from terrible meetings?" I laughed again. The teasing was light, but it created a little sense of us. That kind of playful callback is another thing people often notice when they are trying to read someone's interest. Still, I did not want to assume anything. So I started paying attention to how Ryan treated everyone else. That turned out to be very important. He was warm with everyone. He remembered birthdays. He offered to help people with small tasks. He asked coworkers about their weekends. He complimented people freely. Suddenly, half the things I thought might be special did not seem special anymore. That was a useful reminder. If someone is naturally warm, friendliness can look a lot like flirting. You have to compare the pattern, not just the words. Then something changed. Ryan started finding reasons to stop by my desk even when he did not need anything for work. Sometimes he would say, I was nearby and figured I would say hi. Sometimes he would ask if I had eaten lunch yet. Sometimes he would send me a funny message about something that had happened in a meeting. The messages were not romantic, but they were frequent and clearly unnecessary for work. That was different from how he interacted with most other coworkers. One Friday afternoon, our team was talking about going out for drinks after work. Ryan looked over at me and said, "You are coming, right?" I said, "I am not sure yet." He smiled and said, "Come on, it will be more fun if you are there." That line caught my attention. It will be more fun if you are there. Sounds warmer than a generic invitation. But again, it still does not prove romantic interest. Close friends say things like that too. The meaning depends on the pattern around it. I decided to go. At the bar, Ryan had saved me a seat next to him. He said, "I figured you would end up over here anyway." I said, "That is very confident of you." He laughed and said, "I am working on it." The conversation that night felt different. There was less work talk and more personal curiosity. He asked what kind of people I usually got along with. He asked what I valued in friendships. At one point he asked, "Are you seeing anyone?" That was the first question that felt clearly different. Are you seeing anyone usually means are you dating anyone right now? It is much more personal than asking whether someone is married. And in this context, it was difficult to dismiss as ordinary coworker conversation. I answered, "No, not really." He nodded and said, "Good to know." Good to know is a tiny phrase, but in that moment, it felt enormous. If he had no personal interest at all, why was that information good to know? Still, I did not ask. I was afraid of making the office awkward, and I was also afraid I had built an entire story out of ordinary friendliness. The next week, Ryan sent me a message after work. He wrote, "Random question." Then he asked if I had ever been to a little Italian restaurant downtown. I said I had heard of it but had never been. He replied, "We should go sometime." There it was, the phrase everyone overthinks. We should go sometime. Does that mean a date? Sometimes yes, sometimes absolutely not. The phrase itself is intentionally casual. It expresses interest in doing something together without committing to a specific plan yet. The important part is what happens next. Does the person follow up with a day and time, or does the idea disappear forever? I decided not to chase the meaning. I simply replied, "Yeah, I would be up for that." "I would be up for that" is a natural way to say you are interested and open to the idea. It sounds positive without sounding overly eager. Then I left the next move to him. 2 days later, he followed up. He said, "How does Thursday sound?" Then he added, "Just the two of us, if that is okay with you." That changed the meaning completely. The invitation was now specific. There was a day, there was a place. And he had intentionally clarified that it would be one-on-one. Specificity is one of the clearest differences between vague friendliness and real intention. I said, "Thursday works for me." Then I smiled and asked, "Are you asking me out?" He looked surprised for half a second and then laughed. He said, "I was trying to be subtle." I said, "You were too subtle." Then he said, "Okay, then yes, I am asking you out." For the first time in weeks, I finally stopped analyzing every sentence. That moment taught me something useful about social English. Warm language can be ambiguous. A compliment is not automatically flirting. A coffee is not automatically a date. "Want to grab lunch" is not automatically romantic. "We should hang out sometime" is definitely not a promise. What matters is the pattern. Does the person consistently create opportunities to spend time with you? Do they remember small details that are specific to you? Do they contact you when there is no practical reason to do so? Do they move from group invitations to one-on-one plans? Do they follow through instead of leaving everything vague? And do they show curiosity about your personal life in a respectful way? One clue may mean nothing. Several consistent clues start to tell a story. There is another important lesson here. Friendly people are allowed to be friendly without it meaning anything romantic. Some people naturally compliment others, remember details, and invite coworkers to lunch. So comparing how someone treats you with how they treat everyone else can give useful context. But even then, you may still not know for sure. That is normal. Human communication is not a secret code with one correct answer. Sometimes the clearest solution is a gentle, direct question. You do not need to make it dramatic. You can say, "Just so I know, is this a friend thing or a date thing?" You can say, "Are you asking me out?" Or you can keep it lighter and say, "Wait, is this a date?" These questions are direct, but they do not have to sound confrontational. Your tone can keep the moment relaxed. Now let us review some of the expressions from the story. "I have heard good things about you" means people have said positive things about you. "So far so good" means things are going well up to this point. "You have a good energy" means you give people a positive or pleasant feeling. "Want to come" is a casual way to invite someone to join you. "I was nearby and figured I would say hi" means I was close, so I decided to come talk to you. "It will be more fun if you are there" means your presence would make the situation more enjoyable. Are you seeing anyone asks whether someone is currently dating someone? Good to know can sound neutral, but in a dating context, it may carry extra meaning. We should go sometime expresses interest in doing something together, but it is still vague until there is a real plan. I would be up for it. That means I would be interested and willing to do it. How does Thursday sound means does Thursday work for you? Just the two of us makes the group invitation clearly one-on-one. I was trying to be subtle means I was trying not to make my intention too obvious. If you have ever wondered whether someone was flirting or simply being polite, do not focus on one sentence, missing to the words, but also watch what happens after the words. Vague interest stays vague. Real intention usually becomes more specific over time. And if it never becomes clear, you are allowed to ask. That is not awkward communication. That is clear communication. If you enjoyed this kind of story-based real-life English, listen again and notice how the meaning changes with the context. On a second listen, focus on the phrases that sounded friendly but ambiguous. On the third listen, imagine how you would respond if someone said them to you. The goal is not only to understand English words, it is to understand what people may be doing with those words in real life. If this kind of English helps you understand real conversations a little better, subscribe to Fluent Trail English and come back for the next story. I will see you in the next episode.